Alright my friends, welcome to video lesson number 2. In this lesson, we're going to be discussing media importation, 3-point editing, overwrite versus insert edits, and using transitions. So we're going to start off with media importation. And we're going to be working with the first project of the semester, Montage. So the first thing we're going to do is copy our template folder structure that we created in video lesson number 1 and rename it for use with the Montage project. So we can either right-click on the template folder and choose Copy, then right-click onto the desktop and choose Paste Item, and you can see that produces a copy. We can also select the folder and use Command or Control C, and then click on the desktop and use Command or Control V to paste a copy of that folder. Now we'll rename it. Click in here and get rid of the 2 at the end, and then also replace template with Montage. Set our template folder aside, and this is what we'll be working with. Montage 2017. Click in, and the first thing we're going to do is go to the project folder and rename the template Premiere project. That we also want to be Montage. And then we're going to change the date. In this case, we're going to go with September 1st, 2017. So the next thing we want to do is bring in the media that we are going to use for this project. Now in class, you'll probably get this from a shared server. In my case, I'm going to get it from an external hard drive that I have. Bring in this window here, and I'm going to go to the media folder where my various categories of media are stored. Select those. I'm just clicking in the white area, holding and dragging here to select them all. You can also click the top folder and then hold Shift and click the last folder and select all of them. Both of those methods work. And I'm going to click, hold, and drag them over to the media folder here in my Montage project structure. Let go, and they will copy over. Let's get rid of this window. Okay, great. Now those are copied over. The next thing I want to do is get the music that I'm going to use with this project. And I'm going to be putting that music here in the MX folder. Okay, so in order to download some music to use in this project, I'm going to go to the freemusicarchive.org site. Switching over to Chrome, and that's freemusicarchive.org. And in this site, pretty much the easiest way to search for music is to go to Genres here, the Genres tab, roll over that, pops out with all these different genres that are available to you. I'm going to go for electronic. And inside the electronic genre, there are all these other different choices. Let's go for minimal electronic. And then in that category, and you can see it's spelled out for you here, there are many tracks. You can see just in that one category, 1,051 tracks. There are tens of thousands of different tracks available on this site. So I think you guys will not have much trouble finding music that will work for your projects. You can audition here by hitting the play button, and then once you find something that you like, just hit the download arrow here, and it will actually download to your downloads folder. Okay, so let's hide Chrome. Open up a new window. It's Command N for new window. Control N in Windows, go to my Downloads folder, and here's the track I downloaded. I'm immediately going to take that and move it to my music folder, the MX folder, in my montage project. Make sure that it's not left in Downloads. If it had just copied over and there was still the original track here, I would delete it because I only want it to exist in my montage project folder, not in Downloads. That way there's no way I can possibly be linking to my Downloads folder for content that is in my project. The reason being that if I go to another machine, I will no longer have access to this Downloads folder on this local machine, and I will have media offline. Not good. Closing that. Okay, so we've got media to work with and music to work with. Let's get into the project and start editing. Okay, so the first thing that we need to do is import our media and our music to our project. So I'm going to highlight the media bin and right-click and choose Import, or select the media bin and use the keyboard shortcut Command-I or Control-I for PC. That's how the cool kids do it. Either way, we'll launch this importation navigation window here, and I'm going to go to Desktop, Montage, Media, and select again my different categories of media here, my animals, city, miscellaneous, nature, waves. I'm going to select all those folders and click Import. Premiere will go to work bringing those files into the project. And here they are, nicely organized by Premiere. So you can see if I twirl down animals, there's all my animal shots, city, and so on. Next, I'm going to import my music. Selecting the music bin and hitting Command or Control-I, I will navigate to the desktop, montage, the MX folder for music, choose my track, and import it. Here it is. Excellent. So we've got our media imported as well as our music. So finally, the last step in this part of the process is to teach Premiere about the type of media that we're going to be using in this project. We want to have a sequence that matches the settings of this media. So we could actually go up to File, New, Sequence, and launch this scary window here and try and figure out what the best settings are to use with our media. But we're not going to do that. We're going to take a much easier route. Canceling that. And what I'm going to do is select a clip here, right click on it, and choose New Sequence from Clip. And that will automatically create a new sequence that is optimized to the type of media that we'll be using. So the first thing I want to do now is select the clip and delete it, because I don't actually want to use that clip at this point. I just wanted to create this sequence with the proper settings. The proper frame size, which is the size of the image in pixels. In this case, it's going to be 1920 by 1080, which is regular HD. And then also the proper frame rate, which is, you can see down here, is 29.97 frames per second. In essence, a 30 frame per second timeline. That's how fast it plays back. In 1 second, 30 frames of video are played back. Okay, so you can see here we have a new icon above the clip that I used to create the sequence. This icon actually is the sequence that we have created. So the first thing we want to do is rename this. And the name we're going to use is the same name as the project that you can see indicated on the Project Panel tab here. So I'm going to click in and match that name. Montage 2017 underscore my name underscore the 8-digit date format. Year first, then month, then day. Now, this sequence is located in the animals bin inside of my media bin. That's not where it belongs. I actually want that sequence to be located in the sequence bin. That makes sense, right? So what I'm going to do is with my mouse rolled over the project panel here, I'm going to hit the tilde key, which is the key that is immediately below the escape key on the upper left portion of the keyboard. Whatever panel my mouse is rolled over when I hit that key will become full screen. Pretty cool. Okay, you can see whatever panel I roll over and hit that key, it becomes full screen. That's going to make it easier for me to see all of my bins. So I'm going to grab the montage sequence and drag it down to the sequence bin where it should be properly located. Hitting the tilde key again returns me to my standard view here. So now that we have a sequence created, we are ready to begin editing. So that completes the media importation portion of the lesson, and next we'll be moving on to 3-point editing. Okay, so to get started with 3-point editing, we're going to work with the music portion of the project first. Twirl down my music bin here, and I'm going to double click on my track, loading it into the source monitor. Now, this is the way I suggest you guys approach this project. Start with the music. Get the music edited into your timeline first, and then edit in the picture, okay? So being that the assignment is to produce something that is between 1 and 2 minutes long, you can see this song that's 3 minutes, 4 seconds, and 6 frames is going to be too long for that project requirement. So what I'm going to do is edit this song down. And I'd like you guys to do the same thing. Don't use the entire song, cut it down, or lengthen it if the song is too short, so that you have something that fits into the parameters of the assignment. So what I'm going to try and do is include a beginning, a middle, and an end to this song by cutting it up. So at the very beginning here, you can see I have my playhead here, and I can grab it and scroll through my song if I like. All right. But it's really difficult to be accurate in terms of lining it up to exact music points. So what I want to do is zoom in, get a closer view. And I'm going to do that by hitting the plus key that's right next to the rectangular, what I call the big fat delete key. That's in the right center portion of the keyboard. So I'm going to hit that plus key, and that will zoom me in. And I can zoom in quite a bit, all the way down to the level of 1 frame here, all right? Now if I want to zoom out, I'll hit the minus key that's right next to the plus key, and that'll zoom me out a bit. So now you can see it'll be easier for me to get my playhead lined up to the very first pulse of music here. Now I can also use the arrow keys, the right and left arrow keys, to move 1 frame at a time back and forth through the clip. So what I'm going to do is move forward in this clip until I hear the very first piece of this pulse of music. There it is. You can hear when I approach it and just touch it, I hear just the beginning. And that's where I want to identify the beginning portion of what I want to use here. And I'm going to do that by marking an in point. Okay? And I'm going to do that by using the I key. And you can see when I do that, Premiere now has marked an endpoint saying this is where I want to begin using this clip. So I'm going to zoom out now and play through and find a place where I would like to make an edit and then find some other portion of the song to continue with. I think I'm going to go about, I don't know, 45 seconds or so in. Try and find a natural point to make an edit here. Let's see. Let's see what we got over here. Okay, so that sounded like a natural end and then the beginning of a new phrase of music. That's where I'm going to stop. And again, I'm going to zoom in using my plus key and arrow toward the beginning of that next phrase of music. You can hear right there, that is the beginning of the next phrase. So I don't want this piece. I want to include everything before that, but not that. So I'm arrowing back by 1 frame and using the O key to now mark an out. So I've marked an in and an out. So far I have 2 out of the 3 points necessary for 3-point editing. So I'm going to zoom out now using the minus key, and you can see I've got my in and out, and I've identified a particular portion of the music that I want to use. So what I'm going to do now is edit that down into the timeline. And I need a 3rd point, an in point in the timeline that says this is where I want to put this portion I have identified to use. So I'm going to take my playhead and put it all the way at the beginning of the timeline, or hit the home key. That will do the same thing. Home brings me home. And I need to be concerned with these 2 columns here. This is called patching. So on the left side, I have the source of my edit. Right now we only have audio, so there's only A1 here. And I want this audio to go on the first audio track down here. You can see there are video tracks, video 1, 2, and 3 above this line right here, and audio tracks A1, 2, and 3 below this line here. So I want to take my source audio, which is 1 track of audio, and patch it just by clicking and holding and dragging it up to the first audio track. So now A1, my source, will go to A1 on the destination. All right, so now with my playhead at the beginning of the timeline and my patching properly done, I'm going to mark an in on the timeline by hitting the I key. That tells Premiere that I want to take this portion that I've identified here and put it at this point that I've identified down here on the timeline. So now I have 3 points for my edit: 1, 2, and 3. So in order to make this edit actually happen, I'm going to use the Overwrite function, and I can use this button right here to make that happen, or I can do what the cool kids do and use a keyboard shortcut, and that is the period key. That will make this Overwrite edit happen. So I'm going to hit the period key, and you can see Premiere edits down that portion of the music to the timeline. Now it looks really small. I can also zoom in on the timeline by hitting that same plus key that I was hitting to zoom in on the source monitor. I'll hit home to go home, zoom out just a little bit with my minus key, and you can see here's my edited piece of audio. I can also expand the track itself by rolling between the 2 tracks here, between A1 and A2, until I get this little bar, grab hold of the bottom of A1 and drag it down to expand it. Now I can more easily see the waveform in my audio. So if I play now, you'll hear the portion that I identified. There it is, starting off with those pulses. Now I'm going to go to the end of the timeline where I marked my out in the source, and you'll hear the music end. Okay, but that's not a great ending to the song. So far I have a beginning and a middle. I need an end now. So I'm going to go back up to my source and try and find a portion that seems like a natural end to me. So what I want to do is get rid of these 2 in and out points, and I'm going to do that by holding down Option and X. That will get rid of both of my in and out points simultaneously. If I only wanted to get rid of the in, I would hold down Option and I, or just the out, Option and O. But I want to get rid of both of them simultaneously, so I'm going to use Option X. There, they're gone. Now I'm going to zoom in where my playhead is. So the zoom will happen wherever your playhead is located. So if I move my playhead here and zoom in, it's going to zoom in on that region. If I move my playhead towards the end here and zoom in, it's going to zoom in on that region. So I think that I'd like to grab a portion of this end here to paste onto the end of what I have in my timeline to make a natural ending to my piece of music. So let's see what we have here. That sure sounds like an N to me. Okay, so I want to grab those 4 pulses here that kind of sound similar to the pulses I had at the beginning. Great way to wrap up the song. So I'm going to zoom in and mark an N at the beginning here. Now I'm going to arrow forward, same process I used before, to get to that very first piece of the part that I want to use. There it is. You can hear that when I actually get to that frame. That's the part I want. So I'm going to mark an N there, zoom back out. You're always zooming in and out when you're doing audio editing like this. Okay, now I'm going to go to the end of that 4th pulse, zoom in, and arrow forward, frame by frame until there's the beginning of the next phrase. I don't want that piece. I'm gonna arrow back by 1 frame, mark my out, zoom back out, and now I have the next piece of the music. So I have 2 points. Once again, I need a 3rd down here in the timeline. Patching is still the way it was, properly done. So I'm gonna take my playhead, hit the end key to get to the very end of the timeline, zoom in there, mark an in, and now Premiere knows that I want to take this piece and put it right here in the timeline. Again, I'm going to use the period key to perform the overwrite edit. And there it is. You can see Premiere took that piece and put it onto the end. Now let's play through and see if that edit sounds natural. Sounds really good. There's a little bit of a click in there. You can hear a little click. So what I'm going to do is zoom in and repair that with a transition. I'm going to right click on the division between these 2 clips, this edit point, and apply default transitions. That's going to put a crossfade on here that blends these 2 pieces of audio together. And I think this crossfade's a little bit too long. If I double click on it, it shows me the duration, which is 1 second. I think I only need a few frames. I'm going to type in 4 for 4 frames and make it much shorter. Now let's play through again and see if we hear that click. Not at all, totally smooth. One more time. Beautiful. So I basically healed that edit point that had the click with a transition, an audio transition. This is the constant power crossfade. This is the audio transition that you will most commonly use when you are editing. We'll get more into transitions in the transition portion of this lesson. So for now, we have our audio edited down into the timeline, and we're ready to start editing picture down now. So let's go over to our project panel and open up a clip in the source monitor. I'm going to double click on the Amazon macaw here. There he is. And what we're going to do now is switch from using the 3-point style where we had 2 points in the source and 1 point in the timeline, and instead we're going to have 1 point in the source and 2 points in the timeline. So I'm going to bring my playhead home in the timeline here, zoom in, and what I want to do is identify a portion of the music that I want to put this clip to. So in this case, I'm going to use this first pulse before the second one starts. So let's play forward and listen to that. Okay, so that's what I want. I want the shot to take up this portion of the music, just that pulse before the next one starts. So I'll go home by hitting the home key, bringing my playhead home, and mark my in at the beginning. And then I'm going to zoom in and arrow forward in the timeline till I get to that second pulse. There it is, just starting. You can hear it. I don't want that piece, so I'm going to arrow back by 1 frame and mark my out. Zooming out again with the minus key, I can also see the entire portion of what is in my timeline at any given point by hitting the backslash key, which is the key that is very close to the plus and minus keys, right underneath that larger delete key. All right, so if I hit that backslash key, Premiere will automatically zoom to show me whatever is the entirety of the contents of the timeline. Pretty cool. So I'm going to zoom back in now so we can clearly see the portion that we're going to lay down picture to in our timeline. Now, up in the source, I want to identify where I want this clip to start. I only care about where I want it to start because Premiere will determine where it's going to end based on this span here that I've already identified in the timeline. So let's drag through here and see if there's anything particularly interesting that our friend the macaw does here. Oh, there's a wink. I think I like the wink. So I'm gonna go to right before the wink happens, and I'm gonna mark my in. Now I've got 1 point up here, and 2 and 3 points down here, all right? 1, 2, 3, 3-point editing. Now, again, I need to make sure that I'm properly patched down here. V1 going to V1. If I wanted to lay this down on, say, video track 2, I would drag the source up to V2, and then when I edited, the clip would wind up on track 2. That's not what I want to do this time, so I'm going to go down to V1, V1 patch to V1, and hit the period key to make an overwrite edit. There it is. Now I've got the macaw laid down into the timeline for just the first portion of that music. Zooming out, let's play that back. There's the wink. And then black with the next pulse because there's no media there. So let's go and grab another clip. Our friend, the bald eagle here. I call him the angry eagle because he looks a little bit perturbed. Well, I like this head turn right here. So I'm going to place my in just before that happens. And I'm going to go down into the timeline and identify the portion that I want to fill. Clicking down here, zooming in. And I want to get to the very end of this clip. And I could drag my playhead over there and try and get it to line up exactly. And if I'm zoomed in, I can do that. But the easiest way to do this is to hit the up arrow key, and it will automatically bring my playhead right to that clip boundary. Now, if my playhead were over here and I hit the down arrow key, it will automatically bring me there as well. Pretty cool. And that works for all the tracks that you have turned on the destination side here, okay? So I'm gonna mark an in at that point, and I want to include this next pulse, but not the third one. So let's play through. Stopping right before I get there, zooming in a little bit, arrowing forward. There it is, the beginning of the next pulse. I don't want that piece associated with this clip, so I'm going to arrow back by 1 frame and mark an out. And now I'm ready again to make my next edit. V1 to V1, 1, 2, 3 points. Using the period key to make my edit. There it is. Now I've got 2 clips. Let's play through and see what we've got. And again, back to black with the third pulse there. Let's get one more piece of media. Let's see, we've got jellyfish, multicolored reef. That sounds interesting. Yeah, look at these fish. All right, so find an interesting portion. I kind of like when the fish in the upper left there peeks around from this piece of coral. So I'm gonna mark my in just before he does that. Go down in the timeline and repeat this process, zooming in a little bit, hitting the up arrow key to line myself up at the end of that clip, marking my in with the I key, and then playing forward through the pulse, stopping, zooming in a little bit more, arrowing forward until I get to the next pulse. There it is, arrowing one frame back, using the O key to mark an out, zooming out a little bit, and executing the edit with the period key. Now I have 3 clips. I've got the macaw, I've got the eagle, and I've got these fish. So you can see 3-point editing basically allows you block by block to construct your timeline. It's almost like Legos, putting them together, snapping them into place, except you're creating an audio-visual experience by doing that. Pretty cool. Okay, so that completes the 3-point editing portion of the lesson. Next, we'll move on to insert versus overwrite edits. Okay, so now we're going to talk about insert versus overwrite editing. And so far what we've been doing has been overwrite editing. And that's where whatever clip we have in the source monitor will replace whatever area we have identified in the timeline. For example, let's go to this pride of lions here, eating. Let's mark an in there. And let's go into the timeline here and identify the area of our multicolor fish here. And if I edit now using the overwrite function, this clip of lions will replace the fish. It will blow right over them. It will overwrite them. So I'm going to use the period key to make that edit. And you can see now we've got the lions where the fish used to be. Okay? That's overwrite. Now, insert is different. So let's undo here, get our fish back, and let's try inserting these lions and see what happens. So to do the insert function, I'm going to use the comma key instead of the period key that we use for overwrite. And you can see when I do that, what actually happens is the lions shove down the fish and the attached audio as well. So everything downstream from my original endpoint in my timeline gets moved down in time so that it actually happens later. So now we've got the lions and then the fish. They have replaced where the fish were, but the fish have been shoved downstream. Now, obviously, I don't want my audio to be split like this. I just wanted to move the fish down. So how do I accomplish that? Well, there are a couple of ways. Let's undo. Number 1, I can actually lock my audio track by clicking this lock icon here. And you can see it's got these lines here indicating that it's not going to do anything. It's not going to move when I make this edit. So now if I make the edit again, inserting, you can see the lions only move down the fish and not the audio. This is a really good, safe way to go. Okay? Another way we could do this is to disengage the sync lock control here, which basically marries whatever's up here to what's down here. So if I turn that off and then make my edit, same thing, okay? It's probably safer to utilize the track locking here, okay? And you can lock as many tracks as you need to. Let's say you had some nat sound down here. You could lock these tracks down here too, okay? Execute the insert edit, pushing my fish downstream. Then if I wanted to do some further audio editing, I could unlock that track and actually manipulate the audio further. So that is insert versus overwrite editing. And next, we'll talk about transitions. All right, so now we're going to talk about transitions, both for use in video and audio. So at the boundary between these two clips, you can see there's really nothing there, just the end of one clip and the beginning of another. And if I play through this, you can see there's just what amounts to a hard cut between these two. It just starkly goes from the end of one clip to the beginning of another. That's it. So here's the end frame of the lions and the first frame of the fish. And nothing special happens in between. It just cuts from one to the other. Well, let's say I want to do a little bit more than that. Maybe I want to have a blending of these two clips over time so that it's not so stark and hard between the two. So if I go over to my effects panel and I twirl down video transitions and then go to the dissolve area here and twirl that down, I can see that I have access to the cross dissolve here. And you can see, because there's a blue box around this, that means it's the default transition, the one that Premiere will use by default unless we tell it otherwise. So there are a couple of different ways I can apply this transition. I can drag and drop it onto the transition between these two clips, and you can see Premiere applies that cross dissolve right there. Or, undoing, I can right click on the transition, the boundary between these two clips, and choose Apply Default Transitions. And automatically Premiere will assume that I want this cross dissolve applied. So now when I play through, you can see that there is a dissolve, a gradual blending between these two clips. Pretty cool, right? In some cases, that's what you want rather than a hard, stark cut. Well, transitions aren't only for video. There's also audio transitions that you can use as well. So you saw earlier when I was doing the audio editing between the two portions of my song that I actually used a very short transition to help soften the transition between one portion of the song and another. If I play through that, you can easily hear very smooth between those two. Well, now what I want to do is actually end this song in a very smooth fashion. Right now, there's something I don't quite like in here. If you listen to the very end, you can hear where there's actually a slide of the guitarist's fingers on the strings. Just give this a listen and you'll hear it. Hear that right at the end? Wee-wah. So I want to get rid of that, and I want to smoothly fade the end of the song into silence. So what I'm going to do is roll over the end of the clip here until I get this trim tool to pop up, and I'm going to click and hold and drag the end of the clip so that I'm excluding that string slide on the guitar. Now let's play forward and hear. Great. I don't hear the string slide at all. But now the clip sort of cuts off at the end, doesn't it? Yeah, not quite a smooth end. So what I'd like to do is apply the default audio transition to this, which if we go over here to, let's twirl up video transitions, twirl down audio transitions, and in the crossfade area, you can see the default is a constant power crossfade, okay? Just like the video transition, I can click and hold and drag that transition onto the end of the clip here, but I'm not gonna do that. I'm going to right click and choose Apply Default Transitions, and I get that constant power crossfade applied. Now if I play forward, nice smooth end. Doesn't sound abrupt at all. Now there's one other way I can apply this transition. Just click to select and delete it. I can also click the clip boundary here and use a key command to make this happen. Shift and D will apply that default transition. Much quicker than right-clicking and choosing Apply Default Transitions. That also applies to the video transition realm. Let's get rid of our cross dissolve there. Click this transition between the two clips and use the key command Shift D, and there we go. Cross dissolve applied quickly. Okay, so That covers transitions, audio and video. And that also concludes video lesson number 2. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you again for video lesson number 3.